Hello and welcome to another video. In this one, we're going to be continuing my Best of the Decades series. I hope you are participating, whether it's in the comments, on your Instagrams, making your own videos for me to promote as well. Just want this to be a fun community challenge that we get to enjoy together. So in this video, I'm going to be sharing my 10 favorite movies to come out of the 80s. So without further ado, let's get started. Welcome once again, my name is Austin, and on this channel we talk about one of my favorite things in the world, movies, and how I tie together my faith with film and everything that's in between. So the 80s is one of my favorite decades of films. I am a 90s kid. I was born in 93, but over the years I've continued to delve back into 80s movies and just the over-the-top nature of a lot of them, the nostalgia for a lot of them. There's so much that just makes it a distinct era of films. And it's, like I said, some of my absolute favorite movies have come out of this decade. So let's start things off with a continuation from my 70s one in the Alien franchise with James Cameron's Aliens. Now, Aliens does a fantastic job continuing the story that was introduced in the first film while taking it in a completely new direction. The first one there was one alien. It was a slow burn. It was very methodical in its pacing. And this one is methodical in its own right, but focusing more on the action side of things, adding more aliens to the mix. A new and still interesting story for Sigourney Weaver's Ripley character of giving her a story focused around her maternal nature and getting to explore that side of her character. Besides that, you got Bill Paxton and the rest of the Space Marines and all the fun banter between their characters. You get a continued exploration and depth added to the world of Alien that was established in Ridley Scott's first movie, and I just love all of the things this movie does to continue it, innovate the franchise, and unfortunately it's probably the best movie since we started the series of the now 6 movies that have come out, but nonetheless it's a testament to how great this movie truly is. Next, but first, Schwarzenegger movie to pop up on this list. This is one of my favorite Arnold Schwarzenegger movies, and this is not the only time you're going to hear him in this 80s one because he really had a great run in the 80s. So this first one we're going to talk about is Predator. Predator is one of my favorite action movies, probably. I love the character design of the Predator itself. I think it's fantastically done. It's so creative. It's terrifying. It's this huge hulking beast. And the fact that we get to see Arnold Schwarzenegger as well as many other just huge macho guys in the 80s, peak of their physique, just absolutely terrified and getting the snot beaten out of them, really, and taken out left and right. I think this movie does a really good job building up its tension throughout. You get funny, awesome 80s one-liners from Schwarzenegger and the rest of the cast, and it also has its more serious moments. I think it's just an all-around great action movie, one I always enjoy going back and revisiting, and it also spouted a franchise that we've continued to enjoy for the most part these days too. Next, a little bit of holiday cheer for you. We got to talk about National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. This is my all-time favorite Christmas movie. I grew up watching it with my family. It's always one that I enjoy watching around the holidays, just the Griswold family Christmas, them coming together with their hilarious but fun and endearing dysfunctional family. And it's just, I love that this movie doesn't shy away from showing that. I'm getting to see just how we continue to love each other even through some of the difficulties that is the holidays, and wanting to have that perfect old-fashioned family Christmas. This movie is absolutely laugh out loud funny constantly throughout. The jokes and writing are fantastic. The acting performances are really good. The humor is on point. This is a movie that is filled with comedy, drama, holiday cheer, all of these things for what makes, in my opinion, the best Christmas movie and one of my favorite movies to come out of the 80s. Next, another Schwarzenegger movie we're going to talk about is The Terminator. And this is also not the only time we're going to be talking about the Terminator franchise in this series. So I absolutely love the first Terminator movie. I like, similar to how they did Alien and Aliens with Terminator and I was going to say Terminators, T2. I like how they take the first one and it's very stripped down, bare bones, like a horror slasher almost, with this Terminator hunting down Sarah Connor, and I just love the presence that Arnold Schwarzenegger's Terminator has. It's really impactful and iconic still to this day. The story's really cool. The peaks that we get of the future world of that the Terminator fills and the apocalypse to come is really interesting stuff. It gets explored in really interesting ways in the franchise going forward. But this first one set a really high bar with, like I said, great sequences with great sci-fi storytelling, some good action along the way, and like I said, set up for a really good continuation in T2. Next, one that I've been introduced to just in the past couple of years. I've always been a fan of Jackie Chan's Rush Hour movies, but when I went back to start watching some of his Hong Kong stuff, that's even better than I would have ever hoped it would be. So the movie I want to talk about for one of my favorites from the 80s for him is going to be Police Story. I delved into the Police Story series in the past couple of years and have seen the first two. The third one is coming to 4K in the next month or so, and I am eagerly looking forward to that release because Michelle Yeoh is in it too, and I love her as well. But we're talking about the Police Story, the first one in this one. So I love both of these movies, especially the first one. It has mind-blowing action sequences. Every single action scene, I was saying to myself, how on earth did they do this? They just do fantastic stunt work, some of the best in the business. And back in the 80s, when there wasn't as many safety regulations and stuff, they pretty much killed themselves making this movie happen, and you can really see the effort that they put in. And besides that, Jackie Chan is so fun and charming in this movie. It's equally funny, great action. He sings the main theme song for this movie as well. He directs the movie in a really great way. Like I said, all of the action sequences from the opening, one that goes through the village, down the hill, all the way to the end with the mall fight and the way he slides down the pole and all that. Amazing action sequences. If you've not seen some of Jackie Chan's Hong Kong stuff, you gotta check it out because it's really great. Next, we have Back to the Future. Back to the Future is an absolute staple of the 80s. I love the camaraderie between Marty and Doc. Their chemistry is so great and endearing on screen, and getting to see it explored through the future films as well is great. But the first one is just one of those movies that is just a perfect movie. It's such great pacing, storytelling, there's good drama, there's comedy, there's all of these great things along the way. It's great science fiction storytelling as well, and it just tells this really fun story that you get to enjoy a great adventure on, and it's one that is always fun to go back and revisit. It's been far too long since I've revisited this trilogy. It sits here on my shelf and I keep meaning to go back and watch it, but just haven't yet. I do need to upgrade this one to 4K at some point, but that's besides the point. But the Back to the Future series as a whole, especially the first one, is a fantastic trilogy and one of the staples, as I said, of the 80s, that you can't deny its space as one of the best movies to come out of that decade. Another, for me, staple of the 80s has got to be The Goonies. This is one that I watched a few times growing up. I remember the first time I watched it was at my cousin's house, and then I picked it up on Blu-ray a couple of years ago, and it was the first time since I'd watched it since I was a kid, and just fell in love with it all over again. I think the movie is just one of those great, fun, coming-of-age Steven Spielberg movies. Richard Donner does a fantastic job directing this, and you got all of the great kids. They do a really good job in their respective roles. You just get one of these fun adventures that just is a snapshot in time of 80s culture for kids especially, and just the adventure and innocence of childhood and coming of age. And so I love this movie. It's already one that I want to go back and watch again just because it's such a fun adventure. So The Goonies is definitely, for me, one of the best movies to come out of the 80s. Next, we have a movie that I was introduced to in the past few years or so. I finally had checked out The Lost Boys for the first time, and just after one viewing, fell in love with it. I love 80s stuff, and this is an absolute staple of the 80s for me as well. I love the music that is utilized in this one. I definitely go back and listen to this soundtrack quite often, especially that one saxophone song with that guy on the beach. Love it. Great song. So besides that, you get really fun kind of 80s horror adventure fun. I mean, you get really cool stuff with just the culture and the time period, kind of like Goonies. It's a snapshot in time, and I love the way that this movie just crafts everything. It's so unique and so different from everything else that's out there, and I think it's a really fun adventure that has just enough like horror kind of stuff in there at the same time, and one that is really fun to just go back and revisit time and time again. Next, I would be remiss if I did not include a Studio Ghibli movie on this list, especially for the 80s. And my favorite of the 80s movies that they released is My Neighbor Totoro. This is one I just watched definitely, I think, in the past 6 months or so for the first time, but immediately fell in love with it. I think my favorite Ghibli movies are the ones that revolve around kids and childhood. There's just something so charming about that, and the way that Miyazaki captures it in his films. As I've mentioned before in this video, the innocence of childhood. And I think this movie does it brilliantly. Spirited Away is still my favorite of the Ghibli movies, but My Neighbor Totoro is no less significant. I think it's very iconic. I love the story of the two sisters that it tells, and they're similar of a coming of age type story. I think it's so beautiful in the animation, the creatures, the story that's told. It's one of those movies that's so easy to just pop on. I already want to go back and watch this one again just for the chance to escape back into this world. So My Neighbor Totoro is another pick for me for one of the best movies of the 80s. Then rounding off this list with the 10th movie, we have The Empire Strikes Back. I talked about Star Wars A New Hope in the best of the 70s, and The Empire Strikes Back is easily one of the best movies to come out of the 80s as well. It takes everything that the foundation of A New Hope set up and totally goes in so many interesting directions with it. It's darker in tone. There's more of a compelling story, I think, even in this one, with the reveals of Darth Vader's character and Luke Skywalker. There's new characters introduced as Lando Calrissian and stuff like that. The action's awesome. There's continue to use really great miniature work. Specifically, the Battle of Hoth is really great and that comes to mind. All of it is just so exciting to see explored and delved deeper in. So I love the original trilogy, some of my favorite Star Wars movies, and The Empire Strikes Back is easily one of the best in the Star Wars franchise and one of the best movies to come out of the 80s in my opinion. So that wraps up my list for my 10 picks for my favorite movies and the best of the decade. So I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below, or if you want to put a post up on Instagram, your own YouTube video, tag me one way or another, and I'll get it out there as part of this community challenge. So thank you for checking out my video. Thank you for sticking around to the end. I'll see you in the next one.